Let's see.
Hello, Samir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are waiting for the starting session, but okay, thank you so much to be here. You are Alessia Tonietti, yeah? Ah, okay. Now we are waiting that everybody comes in, join the meeting, and then we will start. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We are waiting because, yeah, we wait some minutes that participants join the meeting, and then we will start. Good morning, everybody. We can start. Perhaps someone is joining us, but okay, we can start. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the Forum on Intercultural Dialogue and Learning, linked to the Common Ground Networks on Diversity Conference. As you know, panels are recorded. Before we start, let me remind you some of the technical notes that you receive. So panels are recorded in order to be available on the website. We suggest also to use a headset with a microphone if it's possible, and we ask to mute the microphone when you are not talking. And finally, we suggested to select speaker view mode in the meeting. And so we remind also you that all the video presentations are uploaded on the website and remain available. Thank you to be here today for perhaps all the day. This meeting was supposed to be held in Reggio Emilia. Unfortunately, the pandemic prevents us from meeting in person, but we still tried to keep the event in a virtual form. I would like to thank the speakers who have confirmed their participation and sent us the materials you found on the website, because this makes today's discussion possible. Before entering into the contents of the different panels, we would like to start with the greetings of the representatives of the three institutions that made the event possible in partnership with the Common Ground Network and the University of Patras. There are three institutions from Reggio Emilia working on educational issues in different fields and boasting a long experience of working with immigrant communities. So we will hear and see the video of Alberto Melloni, that is the Dean of the Department of Education and Humanities of the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia. The greetings from Carla Rinaldi, that is the President of Fondazione Reggio Children. And the video of Matteo Rinaldini, that is the President of Mondo Insieme Foundation. So let me start with these greetings, and then we will start with the first panel and with the program of all the days.
For inviting you and offering to be with us. Possibility of this encounter, even if it is virtual.
There's a problem with the volume.
In which you are hosted or virtually hosted today is a city that has a special place in the history of education in our country. During the 60s, in this country, the experience of women mostly generated an experience of education mostly oriented to the in the entire global experience in which the young kids, young children were at the center and subject, only object of education. And this experience is also the reason that some 25 years ago oriented the national system of university to develop one that university in Italy, with shape and a different structure. The university was by a different series of departments.
Sorry, I think that we have a problem with volume.
Since 1996, developed by colleagues, students working on primary school teachers, working on organization of language services, since then the department has grown into professors and students, and this year has taken an initiative that is now very visible in the city, and all of you will have the chance to walk in the street of Reggio in this days, and we'll see it. As you know, the last November was the anniversary of the Convention and Declaration of the United Nations concerning childhood authorities, and the 60th anniversary of two important instruments defining the rights of young kids and the right of children and young people. These documents, if you have had a chance to look at it, document, as you have seen probably, is a very cold and diplomatic document. The negotiation that has been developed by the countries and the member states and United Nations for this development, a text that is not a very poetic one. It is a very useful one because it is the evidence that the international community is aligning feelings and laws, initiatives and desires in order to prevent young kids and children from any type of abuse, violence, and to heal as much as possible the wounds created by disaster, wars, plagues, famine. For celebrating this event, the department and the city has decided to take a partnership with the YTT yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That is an organization they brought known to you, working in refugee camps all over the world, trying to offer to young people and to young adults an opportunity to reflect and to re-elaborate the trauma of displacement. YTT is asking to many people to draw the experience that is their own yesterday, to have in this way a basis to reflect on what is there today and what will be there tomorrow as they may. So with YTT, the Qualification and the Guidance of the City of Reggio decided to select a certain number of drawings that have been reproduced in large flags and that are now decorating the city. The reason of this initiative is, as I said, based on what the department is, the city is, in the field of qualification, and the reason of this flags this town, as you will be aware of, the national Italian flag was created and adopted for the first time in its colors in this city in 1787. And for this reason, the city is a national flag of the city. So we decided to transform the drawings of the YTT interlocutors in the refugee camps in great flags that are now decorating the city, and these flags are remembering to all of us the disaster that is related to displacement and wars. The drawings are made by kids of different ages. Some of them are mixed with the drawings made by other kids with less tragic history, but the sense of this initiative is to remember that migration is not part of something that is far away from what are the challenges of the educational system, but are at the core of the educational system. And when we opened this exhibition in the streets of the city of Reggio Emilia in November, some of the drawings that we selected were in a certain sense disturbing, because they are showing kids crying for what they had to live and walk through. They were describing the sorrow and the pain of people into the refugee camps, the desire for freedom that in many cases is denied, and the need of education that is one of the most profound desire of young boys and girls in despair. But what happened from March on also to this country, was very speaking for all of us. The experience of confinement during the coronavirus pandemic disaster has told to us that every young life is exposed to trauma. Every young life is exposed to possible pain and sorrow that comes unexpected. And the role of education, the role of a civil community is to be prepared for this, and to be prepared listening to the sorrow of the people that is now in the situation and preparing themselves to a life of compassion in which education may be one of the most important aspects in this sense. As I've seen from the program of your conference, the issues that you are taking are not related to very specific individuals or situation. They have a very interesting and broad aspect. Educational passport that UNESCO is encouraging in order to recognize the training and the education of displaced people. It's one of the most important aspects that I've seen in your work. But in general, for us, is a great joy and a great honor to welcome so important event and to offer a contribution and to welcome you in order to make of the issue of migration and education a central point of the public debate and scientific research. So welcome to the media, welcome to the Department of Education.
Buongiorno. And now is my turn to warmly welcome you. My name is Carla Rinaldi. I'm the president of Fondazione Reggio Children, based in Reggio Emilia, Italy, which aims to improve life of communities around the world by promoting children's rights, starting with the rights to quality education. Our is an international foundation deeply rooted in our local history, Reggio Emilia, in the educational vocation of this city, and in particularly in the experience of the infant center and preschool that have been developed in this reality. It has been an experience that deliberately chose to put the child at the center, because childhood reveals to be not only a phase of life, but a way of thinking of life through life. That's probably why we feel that a conference like this, as the seminar that we are going to live together during these days, can be key for the future of education. Because we deeply feel not only that our foundation, but the world can face the topic, the issue that we are facing is the only hope for us to talk about the future. Because also now we are more aware than ever that for sure there are urgent topics about migration, but we are also should be more aware how urgent is the racial issue, how urgent is to understand that we all are migrants. Migrant from to a world that is the world of unknown, the world of coronavirus, that means the world with a different space and time, where we have to face the unknown, where our differences are equality for finding a solution about what it means to be human. what we are now sharing and facing is a huge topic that is what means nowadays to be human. And the topic of migrants is our topic. So I hope that you can enjoy this time together. I'm very sure that this experience will enrich all of us, not only with your example, but also sharing doubts, uncertainty, is really to live together our time and to take together key decisions for the future. Enjoy the conference. Grazie.
Hello everybody, my name is Matteo Rinaldini and I am the president of Mondo Insieme, an intercultural foundation created by the municipality of Reggio Emilia in 2001. Well, I just want to say hello and welcome to the conference, and I only want to use a few minutes to explain the meaning of our participation and why we wanted to be part of the organization of this specific session of conference, diversity in organization, community, and nation. And to explain all this, let me start from what Mondo Insieme is and what Mondo Insieme does, because the work of Mondo Insieme is crucial, especially in the current times. In fact, Mondo Insieme Foundation has always had a specific approach to migration that is an intercultural approach with a kind of dual track policy. On one side, we supported the necessary redesign of policies and services to answer new needs of the newcomers. And on the other side, we had a significant effort to make explicit that migrants are valuable resources for the whole local community. This idea of dual track policy is shared by the local municipality, and it is strongly embedded in the mission and vision of Mondo Insieme. Consistently with this, Mondo Insieme is a direct way for municipal administration to promote dialogue with different cultures and support participation in the cultural, political, social life of the local community. All this needs involvement of local stakeholders, and this involvement is a significant part of our action. And when I speak of local stakeholders, I'm referring to not only ONG, but also enterprises, business associations, unions, schools, university, and so on. And with these stakeholders, we are trying to create a context where migrants and diversity can be considered not critical factor, as usually is considered, but an advantage, a value for the whole city. And at the same time, we give voice to migrants association, and we daily support this association in their activities within migrants communities. Moreover, we support their associative life and their network. We have more than 30 associations affiliated, and these associations have an annual assembly where they make collective decisions and where they can vote one representative for the board of the Mondo Insieme Foundation. So we work a lot at local level, but we have an intense relationship also at international level, overall with the Council of Europe, and we have a massive international project value because you know it is necessary to move different territorial level when we work with migration, because migration is a global issue. I think it is possible to say that the meaning of our work is to promote an intercultural and an active citizenship and participation. What I mean is that we believe that migrants and their communities can be active protagonists of social, political, and economic life, and not just a passive actor who suffer decisions made elsewhere. And I'm referring to every kind of migrants. Of course, some migrant segments are more vulnerable than others, and of course, on the base of specific migrant segment, their needs and projects change. But you know that often the different typologies of migrants are simply labeled. We attach them. You know that these different typologies often derive from our legislation, from our bureaucratic processes, from legal and juridical paths, and we have created for migrants. And you know that behind the labels, behind the legal paths created by us, there are men and women, children, with whom we must not be only in solidarity, but who represents a great value for the host society. So this is the reason because Monte Insieme targets all different immigrant segments, old immigrants and newcomers, asylum seekers and refugees included. Monte Insieme doesn't provide any social welfare services. Monte Insieme is not a school, and it doesn't want to substitute them. But it collaborates with public and private services and schools, and together them creates action for the integration of newcomers. This is the reason, because this is the reason why I believe our presence at this session is important. We want to speak about our experience. We want to discuss about it, but above all, we want to learn from you and your experience, your studies, your researches. I think this session of discussion and learning is an opportunity for everyone. I just have to thank you. I just have to welcome you in a virtual Reggio Emilia, and I have to want to wish you good job for today. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry for the volume of the first presentation. As you know, the welcome video and all the video presentations are uploaded on the website, also this one, so you can see also the first presentation with a better condition. Let us start with the first panel, and let me say that like a general overview, we assume for this forum refugee and migrant education as a challenge for the inclusiveness and equity of the educational system. We know that there are still access and achievement gaps between refugee migrants and resident population. However, implementing culturally responsive practices lies on the commitment of national and local government, as well as third sector players. So today we decide to consider, to take the perspective of local context, local perspective. Meanwhile, we consider also international and national policy orientations and how they can affect or could affect local practices. We will share experiences and knowledge as international and local actors working with refugee and migrants with special focus on refugee. However, we have in mind that another key aspect concerns the voice of migrants and the perspective of considering them as actors in order to balance the view of refugees and migrants as victims or traumatized people and as competent agents. When we designed the forum, we had no idea of this particular situation we would find ourselves in. So as you can see from the program, the panel topics stimulate reflection around some issues. The first is the recognition of refugees' skills and qualifications. And the second is how we can support the continuum of the educational careers of refugees as children, young people or adults. What attention is paid to refugee children, their well-being, and the context or methodologies that can facilitate their integration into school, and how we can valorize diversity in different community contexts, providing responsible intercultural practices. A lot of the presentation will focus on refugee education because yes, we want to understand better what is doing on this field, but there are also some insights useful also for migrant education in general. To all these topics, we can perhaps add one more question. What has happened? What issues have emerged with in COVID-19 with respect to refugee and migrant education? So perhaps, probably we could give or share some insights about it during the discussion. So now we start the first panel. I remind you that of course panels are designed as talking circles. So we suppose that you have already seen the video presentation. But we ask to presenter to have a very short presentation, 5 minutes, in which they can sum up the contents of the presentation, and then the discussion opens. If you would like to ask the speakers some questions, please write down in the chat where Nicoletta Manzini from Mondinsieme Foundation helped me to keep track and give you the floor following the alphabetic order. And if, as we know that there are many Italians, if you want to write down the question in Italian, we can translate immediately and for the speakers. If you want to make a comment from your experience, you can use the raise your hand function, so we can collect also that. So in the first panel, we have the topic of recognition of refugees' qualification and prior learning. I'm very glad to host Samir Eko from the Council of Europe, Maren Kroger from the UNHCR, and Anna Vittoria Sarli from the Isomo Foundation. And we know that I ask to give you this brief sum up. Together with Samir Eko, there is also Silvia Bianco, that is head of the International Project Unit of CIMEA, that will give directly a contribution in order to provide some information about the implementation of the European Qualification Passport for refugees in Italy. So I give you the floors in order to sum up your content. So probably we can start from the more general overview. Perhaps if Maren Kroger is here, you can start from her, then and connect the aim of the intervention with the recognition of qualification, in which Samir Eko could go more in depth. Is it okay?
Yes, thank you, Rita. Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. As Rita has introduced myself, my name is Maren Kröger and I work for the UN Refugee Agency in the education section in headquarters, and I'm overseeing specifically higher education for refugees. Just to summarize quickly my presentation, and thanks for giving me the floor first, because I think I really have more an introductory presentation, and you have then the experts that are really specifically working on recognition of qualification, which is one of the main barriers for refugees to actually access specifically higher education, and then secondly employment. So I just want to sort of give you a very short overview where we stand in terms of refugee education, specifically with the focus on higher education. You might have seen that we are publishing once a year numbers where we compare access for refugees to education with the global average. And when you see those numbers, it's sort of, we are around 60% for primary education, but then it goes down 24% for secondary, and we only have 3% of refugees currently accessing higher education globally. There are differences by countries. We know in some countries we are actually already with 5 to 6%, but in general we have that 3% on a global scale. So in our new education strategy that is from 2019 to 2030, we have set the goal to achieve 15% of refugees accessing higher education by 2030. And that means a collective effort from all our partners. So it's not only us with our scholarship program, but it's really hosting governments, it's universities themselves, it's different scholarship providers, it's blended learning opportunities. Everybody can contribute to achieve that goal. And we have to address several barriers that specifically refugees are facing. And I just want to highlight, as I'm representing the UN Refugee Agency, I'm talking about refugees here and not about migrants. There are some issues and needs that are similar between refugees and migrants, and some are quite distinct. But when I'm coming back to refugee, specifically for higher education, the barriers are quite diverse. I think one that comes to mind immediately is the financial barrier, because specifically accessing higher education is quite costly, and it requires transport, it requires sort of maybe additional accommodation, it might require tuition fees, paying for courses. So the financial component is an important one, and often that can be covered either by scholarship programs or by universities that might waive tuitions or might give some other additional support to students. But then also the recognition of prior learning is a huge barrier for refugees to access higher education. And I think the European Qualification Passport had really set a sort of a really innovative example on how to overcome that challenge, because especially when students have finished secondary education or even some university courses in their country of origin, and then moving into another country, it might become quite difficult in order to document what they have achieved. And especially because they might not have all the documents with them. No? So often when people are fleeing, they are not fleeing with the full set of the folders of documents, all sort of translated and recognized. So they are often incomplete, and students have to sort of go through a quite cumbersome process in order to prove that what they have achieved. So this is really one of the main barriers, and we are pretty grateful to support Council of Europe with the initiative on the European level, and we are also collaborating jointly with UNESCO to sort of scale that approach on a global level outside of Europe. So we have basically taken the model that had been developed on European level and now supporting actors to sort of trial it outside of Europe. There are some other barriers as well. So one is often that there's a missing academic preparation for refugee students. So they might have been out of school for quite a long time. Universities, especially in Europe, can be quite demanding, and there's a specific way of writing, of doing research, and there might be a need to specifically train and prepare for that type of academic work. Another area that can present a barrier is the language of instruction, depending on which country you are, which is your mother tongue language, and in which language you have finished school. It might also be a challenge to sort of be proficient in the language of instruction in your current university. And then often what we see as well is that refugee students need some additional support in terms of psychosocial support, because they have gone through quite some traumatic experience, and this is sort of impeding their way of studying. Okay. So this is some of the barriers I have 1 more minute. So I just want to highlight some response to the COVID question, because that had been quite important to us, as we know that in most of the countries, schools and universities are closed, so refugee students on all levels are affected. So for us, it's really important that we align with the national responses in each country. We are following WHO guidelines, and we advocate that refugees are included into the national response plans. And this is often the big challenge, that refugees are not considered as a specific group and are basically not seen in the national mechanism that are set up in order to ensure that learning continues. So we are sort of supporting ministries of education, schools, university, to make sure that refugees are included and that somehow learning can continue. That can be done online, but we have also sort of examples where we use radio, where we use TV distant learning materials to be sure that students can continue on all levels. And then the latest point is maybe the safe return back to school and back to university, that now where countries are start to reopen schools, that we make sure that it's done in a safe way, following guidelines, and specifically make sure that refugees who are at risk of dropping out anyway can also return to school and continue their learning and sort of cope with the gap that they have experienced. And I think my time is over, so back to Rita for the next panelist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maren. Yes, I give the floor to Samir that could present to sum up the topic of recognition of previous learning.
So good morning, everybody. And thank you, Rita, for the invitation, and thanks to the organizers for the invitation to present the European Qualifications Passport for Refugees. I'm lucky because I'm here today also with Silvia Bianco, as you mentioned, from CIMEA. So I will be very brief about the general idea of the EQPR. So to let also the 5 minutes to share the 5 minutes for Silvia to present the Italian experience. So as Maren just mentioned, the European Qualifications Passport for Refugee is a tool that can assess refugees' qualifications who cannot document their qualifications. So this is the main idea, is that we really need to find a way how to fairly assess the prior learning they have, the educational background the refugees have when they come in Europe. And then the second aim was to present this assessment in the standard format that can be understandable but also accepted by the end users. And by end users, I mean universities, but also employers, local authorities, in order to easier and faster integrate refugees into their new societies. So the project is being implemented since 2017. We have had evaluation sessions in Greece, in France, in the Netherlands, and of course in Italy. And of course, UNHCR is supporting the project since the beginning, or since 2017, and we are really helpful for all those different involvers or different stakeholders in Italy, but Silvia will mention surely. We are working with universities in France as well. In Greece, we are working a lot with the Ministry of Education and a lot of NGOs, the civil society organizations. And the next challenge, although we are now sure that we have the tested and credible methodology how to evaluate and how to assess refugees' qualification, now there is a challenge how to convince mainly now employers that this document can be trustful. So we really need to find the ways and to find the links with employers in order to get more and more refugees involved in the work field. Although we have already some success stories, but I will leave the word now to Silvia to present the Italian experience, so we can share the 5 minutes, I think. Okay, thank you very much.
So much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rita and Samir, for the introduction. I'm glad to be here today with you to share some of the features of the implementation of the European Qualification Passport for Refugees in Italy. As Samir said, when we started in 2018, the implementation of the EQPR in Italy, we decided to have a systemic approach and also to rely on the nature of CIMEA, that is the National Information Center for Academic Recognition in Italy. So we decided to involve universities, Italian higher education institutions, in order to, first of all, because we knew that as the Italian landscape is very diverse, universities are always very much linked to their regions, and they actually they are the ones who receive requests from refugees to enroll in their courses. And also because we thought that they would also have been the let's say main stakeholders and the users of the EQPR. So we wanted to have them on board to see that the methodology that we use and the evaluations that we carry out are actually scientific and objective. So so this is the main reasons why we got higher education institutions on board. And to briefly give you some numbers, we had four assessment weeks from 2018 till now. We had 49 students that enrolled in Italian universities with the European Qualification Passport for Refugees. And also, we are now organizing the next session that will be completely online. And also, when you were asking about the COVID-19, let's say, the pandemic and how it affects our work, what is positive in our experience is that online interviews started way before the pandemic, so now we are turning completely online, and we are also having some interviews in the health-related fields in order also to support countries with the pandemic. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And yes, before giving the floor to Anna Vittoria Sarli, I just want to ask for the debate, the discussion after the presentation. As I think that I have a question about this European Qualification Passport. If it is only for refugees, or if it is used or useful also for migrant who has problem with the recognition of their qualification. Is it only a tool for refugees or not? And if I understand, there is not only the possibility of recognition of higher education qualification, but also secondary education. Is it? For the debate. And then I give the floor to Anna Vittoria Sarli, because within this process of recognition of competencies and skills, I think that there is also this very important issue about soft skills, how they can be recognized and how they can contribute for the continuum of the educational career, but also for the employment of refugees. So please, Anna Vittoria Sarli, perhaps she has some colleagues from the Dimicome project, so I give you your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now yes, it's okay.
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you very much for this invitation. Actually, what I described in my presentation are some guidelines we elaborated within the Dimicome project, a project led by the SMU Foundation. In fact, as Rita said, Maura Di Mauro and Diego Boerchi, who worked with me at these guidelines, are participating to this meeting as well. So these guidelines are meant to improve the identification and assessment of migrant soft skills. Until now, we spoke about qualifications, so formal learning. In this case, we are rather in the field of non-formal and informal learning, and recognizing also this kind of learning. So it's always a good idea to define soft skills and to clarify how we defined these skills. So we chose the definition elaborated by the Skill Panorama Glossary by the EU Center for Vocational Training, according to which soft skills are those non-technical skills that are cross-cutting across jobs and sectors. So a very important characteristic of these skills is a high level of transferability. In contemporary economies that are constantly changing and that are changing very rapidly, individuals are expected to adjust to this very fast change. And so within this context, soft skills are becoming increasingly important and are increasingly valued by companies. This is true in general, but for migrants, this is even more true, as migrants, once they come to a new country, have to redesign their career. So very often they cannot reuse their hard skills. So the skills they developed in their country of origin, within the job they used to do. What they can leverage on when building a new career often are their soft skills that are highly transferable. So the soft skills they have learned in their context of origin, so in their previous context, can somehow be reused in their new reality. So to foster migrants' employability and to also promote their lifelong learning, soft skills are very important to be recognized. So within the Dimicome project with the ISMU Foundation, we consulted 30 Italian organizations in 3 different regions. These organizations all deal with the recognition of migrants' competencies. These organizations reported some problems and strategies to overcome these problems and strategies used within their work on the recognition of migrant soft skills. On the basis of the information gathered through this consultation process, we created these guidelines. Basically, what we propose, what we suggest, is that the process of identification and assessment of migrants' soft skills should be conceived as part of a wider provision of support aimed to favor migrants' labor inclusion. We think that the identification and assessment process is a learning process, so the relationship between practitioner and migrant is central in the whole process. Identification and assessment should begin with a need assessment. So the first step should always be assessing the need of the beneficiary, so that based on this need analysis, practitioners can then network with other services, other available existing services, so as to overcome the obstacles that the migrant person has when undergoing the process, and also after that when looking for a job.
Anna Vittoria, sorry, yes? I would like to, if you can close the sum up, because we have also the link to the guidelines that is on the chat, so you can.
Yeah, that's perfect. In fact, these points I highlighted are the most salient one, but through this link you can access the whole document. So and it will be in English very soon. So if you want to read it in its English version, you can just email to me and I can send the English version to you.
Thank you so much. And it's very interesting to know and also how it can be used also for doing the training of this practitioner, because I think that you said that it's very important that practitioners are trained also about tools, but also about the definition and of soft skills and how we can consider it. So after this summarize, this sum up of the presenters, I give the floor to the discussion, and I want only to add that in the next session there will be also Michele Telaro, that is colleagues of Maren in terms of that is from Italy, UNHCR from Italy. So perhaps some details from Italy are also could be considered also in this session. But we have already one question that I saw for Samir in the chat that could give us some more information about the implementation of EQPR in Greece. It is for you, Samir. And if some other have questions for the other, we can now keep track and then give the floor to the presenters. In the meantime, if Samir wants to answer, please, you can, or Sylvia, as you want.
If you want, I can start, and maybe Sylvia, you can then add some additional information. So I will try to reply to the question in Greece, but also to your question, Rita, about the refugees and migrants. So as I mentioned in my presentation, the project is implemented within the Lisbon Recognition Convention and the Article 7 of this convention. And this Article 7 is targeting refugees and asylum seekers. So we are not, we cannot accept for the assessments migrants. So the prior condition in order to participate in the assessment is to have the status in the country where the candidate is coming from, either the refugee status or the asylum seeker status. And the level of qualifications we are assessing, it is also, everything is also under the Lisbon Recognition Convention. So we are assessing all qualifications that can give access to higher education. So upper secondary qualifications leading to access to the higher education, but also higher education qualifications. And about the Greece, so the Greece is has not ratified the Lisbon Recognition Convention, but however, Greece and the Ministry of Education was the main partner since the beginning, and initiated also kind of this project, because there was a need, as you know, that Greece is one of the first countries that received the refugees. So there was a real interest in order to help refugees to do something when they arrive in the country. Most of the refugees, also a lot of refugees, moved from Greece to other countries. So the idea was to help the assessment of the qualifications they have while they were already in Greece, and then they could use those documents in other countries. But what we have seen now is that a lot of refugees are now even staying in Greece, and this is also very important. And the EQPR unfortunately cannot give access to the universities in Greece, because as you probably all know, access to higher education in Greece is very regulated, and so for the universities we cannot use it. But one of the main use is it helps its holder to work. We have had, for example, recently an article in the Time magazine about one male nurse who came from Cameroon in Greece, who is now working thanks to the EQPR in Greece in a nurse house. And if you want, I can, in an elderly house, sorry, I will put you the link of the Time magazine. So you can see really his story how really refugees with qualifications can really bring joy to the others, can contribute to development of the community. So yeah, this is about maybe Sylvia can, if Sylvia wants to add something.
As there is also another, thank you, Samir. As there is another question related to this, I can give the floor to Laura if she wants to do the question that is also related to EQPR. So in order to collect the answer.
Hi, good morning. I hope you can hear me. My question is this: if I understood correctly, the EQPR is based on a questionnaire and interviews held by 3 experts, and the interview should be within the refugee's mother tongue. And I was wondering what challenge did you face in finding these experts that had to be versatile in those skills and also able to speak the mother tongue and also culturally aware of refugees' difficulties? Do you have a roster? Is it international? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Regarding the composition of the teams, so how the assessment is done? The assessments are done by the credential evaluators that are coming from the national recognition centers that are partner in the project. For now, we have 10 national recognition centers like CIMEA. CIMEA is one of them, and the Sylvia was also evaluating refugees, so maybe she can also then indicate how it works. But just to bring, maybe just to mention that the interviews and the assessment is done by the team of 2 credential evaluators that are coming from different ENIC-NARIC centers. So from different national recognition centers. And the expertise and the knowledge of the language of the instruction or the mother language of the candidates is within those evaluators. So those evaluators speak different languages: Fari, Arabic, French, English. So these were the main languages that we had for the moment for the evaluations. And this expertise is conducted by those professional evaluators that they are doing this job every day, and they are then allocated. We have a roster, we have a pool of 39 credential evaluators that have been trained in the EQPR methodology and that have participated in the evaluation sessions. As Sylvia mentioned earlier, we had the luck to have, since 2017, evaluation session that were conducting in face-to-face. We had like 1 week evaluation session, let's say in Italy or in Greece, where evaluators from different countries were present and they had interviews with candidates. And thanks to this experience, we are now able to conduct more and more online interviews. And this is also one of the reply to the COVID situation, that we will now be focusing more and more on online interviews, because as we cannot travel, but also because we really think that this mean of assessments will be the main assessment mean in the future. So maybe Sylvia can reply more on the evaluations itself.
Well, I think you summarized it quite well, but yes, we as credential evaluators, we are expert in, let's say, how education systems work. So this is the main point. And then, as Samir said, we are always 2. And there's always a person conducting the interview in the mother tongue or the language of instruction of the person. So, for example, in the case of sub-Saharan Africa, we usually use French or English according to the system of education. Also because we from the very beginning, we didn't want to have interpreters or mediators in order to reach the exit words and to get like the information exactly as the person said. just to have a complete overview, and also because, of course, sometimes they do mistakes, like or they say things that are not what we are used to know in the system. But of course, because there is education and there is life, so you have also to have knowledge of the situation of the country. And actually, it's very interesting that in our everyday job, this part of the interviews with refugees is enriching, not only on a human side, but also concerning the knowledge on the educational system. So we bring our expertise, and then we learn also from them some parts, and some when we feel some gaps that we have on the educational systems.
Okay, thank you so much. There is a question from Claire Despierre, and I would like to add to the question of Claire. She's asking if do you have an idea of the real value of this recognition, for instance, by the universities in different countries? I would like a question from the Ismo, Anna Victoria, and the other, and the team, about this use of these guidelines. If the same problem about how who is assessing these soft skills competencies, and how could be managed the languages or the cultural aspect. So how it works for in this kind of evaluation that you are assessing. And for Maren, I think that an important thing you said, one of the goals of your organization is to guarantee a sustainable inclusion into national education systems. So I'm very curious to know how it works. What is the we will have of course a panel about it, but we know that often they are marginal, or they have less access to services, as you said about the data. So what are the main problems, not only of course for higher education you said, but if there are also similar problem for primary or secondary school level? Thank you. Perhaps I don't know if Claire is there is the question of Claire, the real value of this recognition in the university in different countries. And the other for Anna Victoria, Diego, or Marta. And Maren, this topic connected with also, perhaps if you want to choose with COVID and the impact in our country. In your presentation, you saw us the impact in other African around the world, but I'm curious about the impact, if you have data about Italy, Spain, and those countries, and the impact of COVID on refugee education. Please take the floor if you want to answer.
Shall I maybe answer to the Claire question? So about the acceptance of the EQPR in other countries. In France, we are using almost the same approach as we are using now in Italy for the assessment. So we are also involving universities in order to find candidates. So the universities are more and more accepting the EQPR. We have had a case of our first EQPR holder, who was interviewed in March 2017, then moved to Norway, and in June, and in September she was able to follow the course within her field of education in the Oslo Metropolitan University. So there are a lot of countries that are accepting it. We had a case for refugees who moved to Sweden, and Sweden is not part of the project. And the Swedish National Recognition Center used the EQPR to issue the document they are issuing for the universities and for their employers. So we can see that the EQPR is being accepted in different countries. As mentioned, so for the moment we had evaluations in Greece, in Italy, in France. And we had the evaluations in the Netherlands, and we have foreseen to have evaluations in Germany. In those two countries, the idea of the EQPR is more to focus on the employability of refugees with the EQPR. So, as universities have different means to accept refugees without in those countries, so we can see that we are trying to adapt in each country. And I can see also the question from Siska Adele that we can accommodate different prior education experiences.
Yeah.
So during the interview, the evaluators are really experts of the educational backgrounds of the refugees and their countries where they come from. So everything that deals with the qualifications from upper secondary level to higher education, to academic qualifications, we can assess them. We are now, because of the COVID crisis, and we are now even more focusing on evaluation of assessment on health-related qualifications. It is, however, important to mention that we know that the EQPR cannot replace the official and the professional licensing, because all those qualifications are regulated professions. But we hope that it can at least help refugees in the path how to help national authorities in order to recognize those qualifications. So maybe refugees will not be asked to start from the scratch, but they can maybe at least save 1 or 2 years of in order to get the professional licensing, or even how the EQPR holders can maybe work, but under the supervision of fully professional licensed person. So these are the questions that we are now focusing on. And as Silvia mentioned, we will have an online session this Thursday, 11th of June, for refugees living in Italy with the health-related qualifications. In the pool of our EQPR holders, we already have about 40 refugees that have those qualifications, and one of them was the male nurse from Cameroon that is mentioned in the article. So we have tried to cover. The methodology can be adapted to different solutions, and really thanks to the professional expertise and experience of our evaluators, we can adapt to the different situations.
Okay, thank you so much. If some of the other speakers want to say something.
Yes, if I can. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. No, just to say that sometimes companies are somewhat suspicious about the competence of the migrants. And that's why qualification recognition is important. But in Italy, for example, we have our migrants are not so qualified usually. They came mainly from Africa, they are young, they are not qualified. And that's why this doesn't solve our situation, our problem. A solution could be the skills certification, which is based on certification of skills people have developed in an informal and informal situation. That's why we worked with the Micome project on soft skills, which are those that people develop in their life, talking with people, working, doing volunteering and everything, sports and so on. And they sometimes are the only one treasure that these people have to propose to the labor market, both if they are not qualified, but both if they are qualified and they are in difficulties to make recognize their qualification. In my opinion, skills certification can be a solution, at least for some of them. And I think that they will become important also for Italian people in Italy, but all the other nations after a COVID situation, because we will need new competencies. It could be that people can have some of these competencies we cannot cover this need just with formal training, and that's why it's important to invest in certification of skills that people already have. Just to close, I have a question for everybody, a question to pose, because I I'm director of a postgraduate course in career counseling. I always wonder if migrants choose to recognize their qualification, to certificate their skills, to choose a stage, to find a job, to choose a training after a career counseling intervention, a consistent career counseling intervention, because only this way they can make choice that is choice they believe in, and then can be effective at the end. Because at least my experience in Italy, that we propose them to do some training, to find some job without a moment of reflection of their skills and how they can invest in the labor market, Italian labor market. And that's why some of them, for example, have done 2-3 different training and they are still unemployed. I think that we have to invest more in this. It's more challenging to work with this target than with the Italian or European target. But in my opinion, it's very important to start to work more with this.
Thank you so much.
Maybe, sorry to jump in, but I just want to say that the aspect of career counseling, it's an area that is really important, not only in Italy, but everywhere in the world. So we see it specifically also even for higher education graduates, that it's very important to see how they can actually use their sort of degrees in different ways, specifically when we have countries where refugees don't have the right to work. No, so it really also depends to counsel very specifically and on the areas where opportunities are available with different type of backgrounds, and how the legal setting, sort of what type is allowed and what is not allowed. And I think that career counseling has to be integrated throughout the different courses. No, so it's important for higher education courses, but it's also important for those that might not have finished schools and still want to enter the labor market. So I think that's a really valuable point. And there's also a lot of expertise that we can step in from the private sector, because they should be the one providing the counseling or maybe job fairs and sort of talking to persons directly to sort of give that specific advice. I also just would quickly to reply to the 2 questions that had been asked to me. Just on the inclusion to national systems, I think the really important point what we would like to make is that refugees and asylum seekers and whoever is a person to concern to UNHCR has access to the national system. That means they go to the national schools. And that also is really important for the recognition of skills, because as soon as you are part of the national recognized systems, every skill that you acquire is also recognized and accredited. And we really have seen in several countries that when sort of a parallel system is established specifically for the soft skills developments or technical and vocational skills, at the end, the students don't have anything to prove what they have achieved. So it's really by accessing the national system, accessing national institutions, accessing institutions that are supervised by national authorities, we make sure that the skills and the degrees that the students acquire are useful for the context. So that's a really important part also for this area. And then the last point on COVID-19, I can really speak a lot about it. We will have a big conference, or like a big virtual conference on June 19th. We don't yet have the registration link, but I can put some information in the chat box and encourage you all to join. We can share that information with the conference organizers here so that you can distribute among the participants. I think what is interesting on COVID-19 is that we already had a refugee education crisis before the pandemic, and now for sure the risk of dropping out and the risk of being excluded is way higher through the pandemic, especially in those countries where online learning hasn't been possible, right? We do have some good examples, for example, Jordan, where Ministry of Education and Higher Education have really done a great investment already before the crisis, and they could pretty smoothly switch into complete online learning, including offering that for refugees. But then we do have other countries like in the Sahel region in West Africa, where it's very low connectivity, but where partners and ministry had been able to deliver education through radio, through TV, even to send through packages of learning material. So there had been quite some innovative and creative ways in order to address that crisis. And just to say on data, we do not yet have a lot of data available. We just know that in most of the countries worldwide, schools and university had been closed. So I think it's really a problem that is affecting almost all learners worldwide. Over.
Thank you so much. I think that time is already finished for this first panel, even if probably we have a lot of questions, or perhaps we wanted to, and of course we will continue the discussion after, because all the topics and the themes are very intertwined, so we can continue also to speak about that. I want to say also that we probably also keep track of possible other questions, and collect them and send to the presenters, even if after the conference, or if you have also the email and contact. So perhaps as you see that we have different links for different panel, for each panel, in order to in order to monitor, to control participant, how many participants we are. And so perhaps if someone has something to say, we have few minutes. If not, we can, of course. I thank you so much for all this really inspiring experience, and I think that we can continue to share, and on the website not only video presentation are there, but we can also share other materials if you have and if you want to share or put links. I know that there is also Veronica Botti who has something to say. Perhaps we can shift the contribution in the other panel, next panel. And okay, if someone has something that I miss, probably you can say, or we can. There are some in the chat. Okay, Maren, you share the okay. Thank you for the information. We can share, and we collect it, and we share through also emails. So thank you, everybody, to stay in this panel. I think that we have to close the connection, and to for those who are interested in following the other panels, to link to the other one. And we will continue, because the topic is how to support refugees and asylum seekers on the continuum of the educational career. So starting from the recognition of qualification and skills, we can continue asking us how to support not in higher education, but also in other levels, so also in primary, secondary education, and perhaps also coming into the employment. So, okay, thank you very much from the speaker. And if someone has not saw the video, please, they will stay on YouTube channel, so they will be there to be listened again. Someone has to say, okay, it's okay. I don't know, Anna Vittoria, if you want to say something, because the intervention of Diego, but I don't know if you want to add something.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, we have few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just you were asking about language and how to manage the linguistic and cultural aspect of recognition. It is quite a long issue, but concerning language, I think we underlined that it's important to strengthen interlinguistic competencies in practitioners who work in the field of recognition, because of course switching language, giving the possibility and encouraging language shifting and switching during recognition processes is a good opportunity for favoring the surfacing of skills, because of course it is much easier to express a certain soft skill when talking in the language that characterized the context where that competence was acquired. So in fact, at least in the identification process, language switching is very important, while in the process of assessment, it is more important to use the language of the country of destination, because of course in that case it's important that to evaluate, to assess whether the migrant person is able to express himself or herself in the language of the country of destination, because this is quite important in the for employment, so for the labor market. So yes, concerning language and culture, of course, it's a huge issue which is not possible to address in few minutes.
Of course. I know. Thank you so much, Anna Vittoria. Perhaps we are opening question, not answering to all the questions that we have. But okay, we start sharing experience and discussion. I want to say that also Samir wrote a message. If you see on the for Siska, that probably he posted a video that perhaps could reply to Siska questions, so you can have a look on it. And so thank you to everybody, and we go through the panel 2 not panel 4, panel 2. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.